And so I spent a day as like the thing on the internet. I was the viral kid on the internet for that day. But it was a really wild feeling of like watching this thing so fast catch fire and get passed around and realizing that my life might never be the same.
Welcome to the Squires and Friends podcast. I'm your host, Mike Squires, and today I'm joined by my good friend, George Watsky. Now, I'm super excited to have George on the podcast because I have toured with George for years. We talk about George's album Trilogy, Complaint, Placement, and Intention, which I actually worked on. We talk about a bunch of eras of George's career, from Cardboard Castles to Warped Tour to xInfinity to the epic rap battles of history. We talk about the viral video that changed his life. I also talked to George about getting the Guinness World Record for longest freestyle. But to be honest with you, I'm just excited to have George in the greatest state of all time, Connecticut. Now listen, if you want to support the Squires and Friends podcast, all you gotta do is hit the subscribe button, hit the like button, drop a comment, and if you're listening on your preferred podcast platform, hit that download. It goes a long way and really helps me out. And with that being said, ladies and gentlemen, sit back, relax, and enjoy this episode of Squires and Friends. George, I'm happy you're here, dude.
Hey, it's good to be here.
How's the family reunion tour, dude?
Family reunion tour is great. We're 6 stops into a 14-stop tour, and it's been awesome. It's not like any other tour that I've ever done before, but super, super happy with how it's all worked out.
Yeah. Well, because I'm catching you in the middle of a tour run, I want to hop right into it, dude. Let's get straight into the album Trilogy, dude. So how did the concept of the album Trilogy first come to be?
So I finished xInfinity and did a music video for all the songs, and I finished those music videos in 2017, and I wanted to do a project that felt even bigger than it in some ways, but I didn't want to spend 6 or 7 years working on one like 37-track album, and so I decided I wanted to do these pieces of it where people would get the first piece but not realize there was going to be this much bigger project that they were going to get a little bit at the time. So I wanted to have people keep being surprised by these new elements of it. So the idea was we put all the 3 album covers together and you can read across the middle of it. And I was trying to work it out on a piece of paper, but every time you get one letter off, the whole thing falls apart. So I decided to work with my friend who's a data scientist to actually build an algorithm to title these records. And it was always going to be an experiment. Like, if the words aren't cool, if they don't resonate with me, I'm not going to do it. But, he basically built this word puzzle algorithm, and it spit out these words: complaint, placement, and intention, that I instantly really bonded with, and decided to spend the next 6 years of my life making a record trilogy, unpacking what those words meant to me.
Yeah, when you released Complaint, how hard was it to bite your tongue that this was part of a bigger picture?
Oh, dude, I hated it. I hate keeping secrets. Like, I wanted to tell everyone, because there were people who were like, you come off xInfinity, you put out this wimpy 9-track record, what's the deal, or expecting a grander vision. And I was like, oh, y'all, just fucking wait, bro. But I knew that if I said that, I would ruin the entire, no pun intended, intention of the whole project. And so, yeah, it was horrible, but I had to do it.
Yeah. And, let's talk about the Intention tour. That's the tour that just happened. And people watching might not know this, but maybe they do. But I've actually toured with you a lot, dude.
Yes, sir.
That's how, we connected. Well, we've connected before then, but, we spent most of the time on the road.
Yeah.
So let's talk about the roller coaster of what the Intention tour was, dude, if that's okay.
Yeah. I mean, well, I guess it's hard to talk about the Intention tour without starting with the Placement tour.
Yeah.
Right, because that was supposed to be, RIP, a March 2020 tour, and we all know what happened in March 2020. I was in rehearsals for this beautiful tour that had these multiple stops in the cities that I love, and we were playing album shows in different cities. It's just I constructed this perfect bird nest of a tour, and then we're in rehearsals 3 or 4 days in, just watching the news get worse and worse until ultimately lockdown goes into effect, and 3 days before the first date, we scrap it. And then I just spent most of the pandemic determined to make that tour happen. And people held their tickets for 2 years. We rescheduled it, and then Delta came, and then we rescheduled it, and then Omicron came. So there were ultimately 3 reschedulings of that tour. The Placement tour never happened, but it took so long that I had this new record that you were there helping me make. And so it was fitting, because the second record got washed out by the pandemic, but we got to come back and have this moment of closure and catharsis and do the Intention tour, which also kind of represented the middle tour that never happened. So it was really awesome. We did it, this past like spring and summer, and flawless victory. It was awesome.
Dude, I remember that FaceTime, dude, because when you FaceTime me and originally told me the tour was canceled, I was on the road with Greaves in the Hold Up.
Right.
And when you FaceTime me, I just remember you being in the truck, very dismal lighting, and it was like the most somber phone call of all time, dude.
Yeah. I'm trying to remember. I think I was in a Walmart parking lot because I called Greaves right after that too. And Greaves was more upset than I was.
Oh, man, I saw that firsthand.
I mean, family to take care of.
Yeah, the vibe. The second you called and let your news go, we knew our ship was sinking at that point.
Yeah, I don't think he had fully like wrapped his mind around like, oh, this is like happening. Like the world is shutting down right now. It was horrible. Yeah, I packed all my stuff. It was raining that day in LA when we canceled our rehearsal. And at the time I was driving this crappy 82 Ram, and I loaded all my gear in road cases and put them under a tarp, and we're like loading out in the rain, and my fucking electronics are getting wet. And yeah, it was hard to complain about your pandemic situation, knowing that many other people had it way worse. But it sucked ass. It was awful.
But you're not the type of person to stay down, George. So I want to talk about the freestyle, dude, the Guinness World Record freestyle.
Yeah.
What inspired you to do that, dude?
Well, so we decided to do that record-breaking stream. I think it was May when we did it. So, okay, let's do the timeline. Tour gets canceled in March. April, I go to live with my manager, Jeff, and my girlfriend, Amber, in this house in the Hollywood Hills. And we're just there for a month, like many people were, early pandemic, 8 p.m., people are banging on pots. And at the same time, my whole touring crew is out of work and didn't get to do this job, this gig that was supposed to be this big, decent chunk of change. And we're trying to figure out how to sort of make the best of the refund situation. There's a lot of companies like, Ticketmaster, what's up? Like all these places that were not issuing refunds yet. So I'm going to take a slight detour to complain about ticketing services, while also acknowledging that promoters were underwater in this period. Like it was really hard for everybody because no one had the mechanisms in place to like have all these shows go down at the same time. And so when people bought a ticket, I don't get any of that money until after we've played the show. And so we have these shows we haven't played. People have given their money, sometimes bought plane tickets and stuff. And all these people are asked out because the tours are canceled, wanting refunds and them potentially being out of work too. So this is a horrible situation, and people can't get refunds. My band and crew haven't been paid, and it's just like trying to think of anything that we can do to make the situation better. And I don't know exactly where the idea came from, but I think it was just, let's do a stream. And then the next question was, how can we make a stream that people are going to care about? Well, what do people care about? World records. Well, what can I do that, how could I break a world record? Well, if I try to break the record for fastest rapping ever, the stream's going to be like 25 seconds long. So that's not going to work because we're not going to generate donations. It needs to be a long stream. So I need to do a stamina record. It kind of was obvious. I mean, this is a record a few indie rappers have broken over the years. Murs held the record at one point. Chitty from Chitty Bang held the record at one point. And they were things that got blog attention. So once that popped into my head, I was like, I could do that. Because it doesn't even need to be good. You just need to rhyme bat, cat, mat, hat.
It's more a stamina challenge.
It's a stamina challenge. That's really, once you can like string a few rhymes together, that's really what it is. Nobody's with a notebook being like, well, that multi was kind of weak right there. Like, I don't know about that metaphor, bro. Like,
yeah, dude.
Yeah.
But I also want to say, like, you did something that most artists that like run a team wouldn't do, is that you helped your like team, including myself, during a time that like everyone needed it. So one, I'm just going to thank you for that off rip again, dude. But like, for those that don't know, George did me a super solid when that happened, and You basically made me go through the pandemic like unscathed.
Right on, man. Well, the Watsky PPP loans were in effect before the government got them together. I mean, honestly, that was one of the coolest things I've ever done in my career. Just the way it made me feel. I mean, I think that I was struggling to feel a sense of purpose and to feel like in that situation where none of us had control, that we could have any kind of control at all. So it did give me a sense of like, you know, I could do something to control my destiny in this horrible moment, to, you know, try to do something for the community that I'm a part of. And then to have this wave of support from the internet and to have a live stream kind of feel like a live show in a way I've never experienced, where like it really felt like people were behind me and had my back. It was really just a beautiful experience.
So a lot of the first records from Intention were actually made on the Pink Lemonade tour. I want to talk a little bit about that experience.
Yeah. So the Pink Lemonade tour was the tour that happened when the third cancellation of the placement tour happened, and it was really close to when we were supposed to go out on the road. So we couldn't cancel the bus contract, and people were in my band pretty much packing their bags to go. And we decided that we would take the wreckage of the tour and rebook it to music studios and then make a music studio tour and work on songs. And so we took the tour bus out and we hopped from studio to studio, and me and Chukudi Hodge, Max Miller-Lauren, Aaron Carmack, Camila Recchio, Kush Modi, Big Mikey Squires.
Let's go.
And Ellie Christie, we cruised around and went from city to city and worked on music, and a lot of those songs made it onto Intention. So the idea was, because the Intention album is very much like a band album, an album that represents these 12 years that I spent touring with these awesome people. And so it was cool to be able to infuse that energy into the record in this like very organic way.
Yeah. And I want to talk to you about Searching, maybe not necessarily the record itself, but like where you were staying at the time we worked on Searching, and why.
So after I got done with the Pink Lemonade tour, I rented a warehouse in this industrial core of LA, a big warehouse that I could use as a place to stage and build music video sets, because I love carpentry and I got more into it during the pandemic. And Mike Squires, who's interviewing me right now, came out to stay with me a little bit towards the end of the Intention project. So this is like right before I go into the mixing phase. And I think, so it's an 18-song album. I think I got like 15, 16 songs at this point. And I heard this song, Sarah Smile, somewhere. I can't remember if it was before or after you got there. I think it was before.
I think it was before.
And then you got there and I said, Mike, like there's this Hall & Oates sample that like I really love, and I can't really remember hearing it flipped in the same way into a hip hop song. So like, you want to make, we talked about making some music together while you were out there.
Yeah.
And so late night while we were working on the Aw Shit video, we made some time to just make a track together. And, you know, you and I just stayed up late and made a song. I think we pretty much made it like from beat to chorus to verses in like 2 or 3 days or something.
Yeah.
Sitting there, yeah.
It was pretty quick. And I just remember after we finished it, just like we were at like an Airbnb after the fact, and we were just like, we played it on repeat for like at least an hour, dude, or something like that.
I love that song. I'm disappointed I never made a music video for it, but you know, we can't be doing 18 music videos anymore.
Yeah, I definitely want to talk to you about that later, but one thing I want to talk to you right now about is one of the most elaborate things that you've ever done. You did a treasure hunt a worldwide treasure hunt alongside your album.
Yeah.
Can we talk about that? I know that's like a big thing to talk about.
Yeah, well, we can talk about it. The paradox of talking about something that's supposed to be like kind of secret is that one, like I don't like to keep secrets, but at the same time, like you got to protect the mystique a little bit. So I'm going to preface talking about the treasure hunt in a way that's going to be confusing for people that are watching this that don't know what's up. Because there's a character that's running the treasure hunt whose name is Tommy Designer. And to the average person, he might look a lot like me. He might sound a lot like me. He might tweet or Instagram post a lot like me, but his name is Tommy Designer. He is not me. He's the person running this treasure hunt, if y'all catch my drift. So Tommy Designer created this treasure hunt, And from what he tells me, it's been a really elaborate, complicated experience. He went around the world and hid these wooden puzzle boxes in a bunch of different places and collaborated with a guy named Sandy Weiss, who runs a company called the Mystery League, to create these incredibly elaborate puzzles, to have this just experiential project that goes alongside the intention record, so that there could be a part of my record that was really about adventuring and going back into the world and mystery. And you know me and Tommy, like what we're into is just maximalism. And this is kind of at the core of what I do. I feel like if someone asks me what makes me me and what makes what I do, it's like to latch onto an idea that seems a little audacious, that seems maybe a little silly, and a little over the top, that maybe is like almost not a good idea, but because it's almost not a good idea, it's actually a great idea if you hyper invest in it and bust your ass doing it. So that's kind of just exactly what the treasure hunt is.
Yeah. I don't know if you want to go more into like, you know, some of the places that Tommy hid these treasure boxes and...
Yeah, I could. Well, I don't know exactly when this podcast is going to air, so things may have changed by the time you hear this message. But basically, 9 boxes were hidden around the world. Let me see if I can rattle them off. And I can't rattle off the 9th one because it hasn't been found yet. So 8 of the 9 have been found in the world. It's been almost a year people have been working on this. We have Delaware, Idaho, which was discovered accidentally by a hiker who reported it to the group. Florida / the Bahamas, which was hidden in the shipwreck of the SS Sapona. Georgetown, California, in this thing called a Nelderplot, these concentric rings of pine trees. One was hidden in Cornwall in the UK. Namibia in Africa, Mumbai in India, Perth, Australia, in a cafe called The Moon. We hid it under a trap door in their cafe. So that's 8 of the 9, and number 9, TBD.
It's insane, dude. And you know, so did I went with Tommy Designer or like?
I mean, yeah, I think you went around the world with Tommy Designer.
Yeah. So, you know, I had the opportunity to go with Tommy Designer to 2 of these locations, and I went to the Sapona one, and that trip is what inspired me to start hitting the gym, dude.
No shit.
Yeah, because I remember swimming there, and I was like, all right, I gotta step it up. You know what I mean? So,
yeah. Tommy told me all about that trip. So Mike went with Tommy to Delaware. No, first you flew to Florida.
We flew to Florida, yeah.
And took a ferry out to the Bimini Islands, and then another boat out to this shipwreck.
Yeah.
Swam with the sharks, snorkeled, hid a little prism inside the rusting hull of an old ship in a reef like hundreds of miles off the coast. Yeah, crazy shit, Mike. You're a bad motherfucker.
Dude, it was definitely one of the most elaborate things I've been a part of.
Yeah.
But another thing I want to talk to you, because you talked about Namibia a little bit. I want to talk to you about the advanced placement video.
Oh, cool.
Yeah. So, you know, what was that experience like?
So a few years ago, after coming out of xInfinity and feeling like, you know, I love making these big production videos. And for me, people might see one of my videos and not be able to distinguish it. You know, like you don't know when an artist is necessarily an indie artist or a label artist these days, because an indie artist can make a video look pretty damn good if you know the right people and have good cinematographers. And I take a lot of pride in my music videos, but it's also expensive to put 30 people on a set in Los Angeles. And I was starting to feel like, well, just having a big glossy video does not make a good video. And a lot of my friends who have been working in Hollywood, like some of them are now working on real sets, as opposed to when we first got out to LA and we were just doing guerrilla shit around town. It's harder for them to get excited about a project. And I miss the feelings of the first music video sets that we were on when we got to LA in like, you know, the early 2010s. And so I wanted to construct a different way to shoot a music video and find a different way for there to be like visual value in it, not just necessarily from the money you put in. And since I love adventures, this ties back into that kind of love for puzzle hunting and adventuring. I was like, well, maybe me and 2 of my friends, we can bust it down to a skeleton crew, get a couple people that love to backpack and love to travel, but also that the 3 of us could make a really solid bare bones music video crew together. We put our gear on our back and we throw a dart at the map, and we pick a place that has really great visual interest, and we let the landscape be the star of the show. So Namibia has these sweeping landscapes. One is like the background of an OS. I think it's OS Sahara probably, even though that's not the Sahara Desert. No, it might be Mojave. They use these big red sand dunes from Namibia, and there's these trees that look like Dali paintings coming up in this place called Sosuvle. And so me, my friend Mike Dempsey, and Jess Dunlap, who's the cinematographer, we brought all our gear. I had my costume designed before I went. We had this hair piece we had to put on, and I learned to stilt walk.
I wanted to talk about that, dude.
Yeah, so the idea was we would take this location and then we would reverse engineer the concept of the video from the location. So we knew we were going to shoot this thing in this clay pan with these big scraggly Salvador Dali trees. So then Mike, and it was kind of a brainstorming session. We were like, well, maybe we can make a character that, you know, really lives in this world. And Mike loves elongated forms. He loves to, stretch people's arms and legs out. And so we thought, well, maybe it can be a giant that's got this curly hair that looks like the trees. And so maybe there's a character that's got these really long legs. And my thing is, like, when you get a seed of an idea, how can you take the seed of that idea and explode it out into like the biggest, funnest version of that idea? So, I want long legs. Well, I should be fucking stilt walking. Well, I don't know how to stilt walk. Well, I got to learn how to stilt walk. Well, how tall can I be? Well, how tall can we make the stilts? Like, what is the absolute limit of what we can do? And let's go up to that. So I learned to stilt walk. I went to circus classes. I bought these tiny little stilts and then took them apart, went to Home Depot and bought the longest pieces of wood I can and put the stilts back together. And then we flew the stilt. We had a costume designer come in and build a costume around the stilts and flew to Namibia with them. And Mike and Jess lifted me up in the salt pan, and there were like Chinese tourists taking their wedding photos, like taking pictures of me on the salt pan, and I ate shit too right there in front of them too. Just once I hit the ground hard.
But you bounced back.
I did, but after I fell in the salt pan, I was never the same stilt walker. I gotta tell you, I never got my confidence back.
That's what we call character development, dude.
I was just afraid. I started like whiling on those stilts, man. I was like running, I was dancing. I was like, man, I'm fucking doing this shit. And then thing is, when you catch a toe on a stilt, there's no coming back from it because you can't get your feet under you again. And you have a long time to think about how that ground is going to feel when you're on the way down.
Dude, I want to bring it back a little bit, dude. So you entered as a slam poet. I want to talk to you. What was one of the first times you saw success in slam poetry?
Yeah, so I was a little youth poetry kid in the Bay Area in this organization called You Speaks. Shout out You Speaks. And I did their open mics and their slams, and I found this great community of young people that were interested in poetry. And I was about 15 when I started, a sophomore in high school. And success is subjective. I was always a competitive kid. I like to try to win the slams. They're a competition. This is original poetry, judged on a scale of 1 to 10. So it's, you want to hear those 10s. And I didn't win the first few years. You got to finish like top 5 or 6 to make the team that goes to nationals. And so my first year I didn't make it, but the second and third year I made it but didn't win the slam. And I just kept coming back, and I loved to do it. And then there was this old TV show called Def Poetry Jam.
I wanted to talk about that.
Yeah, it was on HBO. It's actually called Russell Simmons Presents Def Poetry, but everyone calls it Def Poetry Jam. And it was on from like the early 2000s until 2007. And I'd always wanted to be on it because sometimes they would send scouts to the youth poetry slams that I was part of and pluck a kid out and put them on TV. And so we knew there was a chance if we did really well in the slam that somebody might see us and put us on it. And I got passed over the first few years. But then my final year of the slam and the final year of Def Poetry, before it went off the air, I got the call, and I went to New York and I did a couple poems. And yeah, I was on the 7th season of Def Poetry when I was 20. And yeah, super, super grateful. That's a little bullet point in my resume I'm very proud of.
Yeah. And then you ended up winning.
Yeah, well, so 2006, the year that the Def Poetry people saw me and put me on that show, was the year that my Bay Area team won the slam. I won the youth like competition in the Bay, and then my team from the Bay, shout out to the '06 U Speaks team, went to the Apollo in New York, and we technically won, although I really have to say, for anybody part of the youth poetry community, Providence, Rhode Island was really like the emotional winner of that night. They fucking killed it and intentionally disqualified themselves because they were like, fuck it, there's some rules about repeated poems you're not allowed to do. And Providence was like, we just want to throw our best poems up in front of this audience and we don't care if we win. So like they beasted and would have won. I think they probably won on points, but got disqualified because they repeated poems. So I'm the technical like 2006 group National Youth Poetry Slam champion, but like I gotta put an asterisk there for Providence because
they crushed it.
I see y'all. I see all these years later. I know what's up.
Yeah. So then, at what point do you start transitioning into your artist career, like the music career?
I started doing music even earlier than I started doing spoken word. It's just no one was listening to it. So like I was one of those kids, just like so many of us in Fruity Loops and GarageBand and all those programs. I started recording with my band Invisible Ink like really early on, but we were just making bedroom music. And then I had that credit on Def Poetry, which allowed me to start making money and getting professional gigs, playing college campuses as a spoken word poet. So at that point, I was doing gigs and venues and touring the country, but I wasn't taken seriously for my music. I was really determined to make that happen. And so when I got out after I graduated college to California, I was just trying to figure out like, how can I make this happen? How can I make this transition work? So I kind of engineered a viral video with my friends back in 2011. And that was really what drew a lot of people to my music. The goal was to get eyeballs, to do this quirky video that people would click on. Watsky Raps Fast, which was originally called Pale Kid Raps Fast. And just, it was an engineered viral video that succeeded beyond our expectations. I got on Ellen, I got on a few late night shows and then I had a bunch of music videos on deck that was my original music. So the goal was to divert that attention as quickly as I could away from this silly viral video to my music. And it worked decently well. I mean, we built a touring career off that. 2012, went out on our first tour with the band, and I never looked back. I still do my spoken word, but I was able to play music venues from then on.
Yeah, what does that moment feel like, though, where you're like, you're starting to see, like, people starting to pay more attention?
It was crazy. So my friends that I was living with at the time, Jenna, Jackson, and Koosh, Jackson's a director, and my friend Jess shot that video. And it was just like, I'd never experienced that. The scale of virality was different in 2011. And so I spent a day as like, the thing on the internet. Like I was the viral kid on the internet for that day. And I had my day where, that happened. And now with how many views happen on TikTok and how overwhelming it is, it's a little different because virality is exploding, little volcanoes erupting all the time. But it was a really wild feeling of like watching this thing so fast catch fire and get passed around and realizing that my life might never be the same. So it was very gratifying, and then quickly was like, oh, this might be a little bit too successful because I don't want to get pigeonholed as the fast rap kid. There's so many, I spent 4 or 5 years before that doing narrative spoken word that like, I was like, yo, like I'm more than this. At the same time, that's what I wished for. So I'm grateful for it. With the benefit of hindsight, would I have played that moment a little bit differently? Probably. I don't think I would have gone on Ellen, to be honest. But I don't have the benefit of hindsight. I did it as best I could in that moment. And I'm really glad that it happened.
Yeah, and you're saying you wouldn't have gone on Ellen because it brought more attention to the fast rapping aspect.
And because I didn't have control over the way she presented me. I think that when you have spent so long not having that kind of exposure opportunity and suddenly you have it, I won't say me, I was the one in that moment. I didn't realize that those opportunities might be something that I could control and that I could determine the way I wanted to present myself to the world. And a show like Ellen or like other late night shows, they have what they're trying to do. And what they're trying to do might not fit into what I have to do. She's bringing on viral people and presenting them as the viral flavor of the moment. And to be fair, she gave me an interview. She brought me back on the show. But like Ellen's not the best format to present yourself as like a well-rounded artist if you're not being presented as an artist on that show. And so I think that in hindsight, I might have been like, well, I would love to come on your show, but if I can perform that song and an original song. And maybe they say no. Maybe they say like, no, we don't have time for that. You don't have the leverage. But the worst that happens is I continue trying to build in another way. So yeah, like I think that maybe I would have answered some questions differently. I might have immediately retitled the video even faster. Fun fact, it was going to be called Squirrely Kid Raps Good before we settled on Pale Kid Raps Fast. We were just trying to come up with a viral video name that like people would click on. But yeah, you know, like I said, maybe I would have played my cards a little differently, but like that's that same mentality of like, man, if I was like in my body now and I was playing Little League, like I'll be cranking homers, you know? Like
Yeah.
We don't get to be our older, wiser versions of ourselves in those moments. So
I got a photo I want to touch on very quickly. You had an awkward experience with Matisyahu?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, on Deaf Poetry, he was on my episode.
Yeah, no, I just saw it. I was like, so what happened there? Like, how did that happen?
I don't know how awkward the experience was for him. I mean, it's a hella awkward looking photo. Like,
Okay.
I had to throw my in the hella. Shout out and Happy Hanukkah right now.
Happy Hanukkah.
Probably not anymore by the time y'all watch this video. But yeah, so Matisyahu was fully in his dressing as an Orthodox. I believe he got ordained as a rabbi. I'm not 100% sure about that. Please don't come at me on the internet if I'm wrong about that. But you know, he was fully Orthodox at that point. He may still be, but he's not dressing that way anymore. So he had his sideburns, and you know, he was fully kitted out, and he did his song. I think he did "King Without a Crown" on Deaf Poetry, and I was like mingling backstage, and I got my photos. I got my photo with him and with me and Most Def, and yeah, I put my arm around his back. He looks like completely shell shocked. He might just look like that in general, but I don't know if I'm supposed to touch him. There might be some rules.
Yeah,
I know if I was you know, female identified, I definitely would not be supposed to touch him in the Orthodox rules. But yeah, you know, I don't think he wanted to be in that photo.
it's all good. It happens to the best of us, dude.
It really does.
Another thing I saw, because I was scrolling through your gram just trying to see like what don't I know about George, because we've obviously spent a lot of time together. How was the show with Adventure Club? They're like EDM DJs. That's like
Damn, you like scroll back to 2014.
Yeah, did some research.
Yeah, hell yeah. I think I got on that Adventure Club bill. So this was Denver because I had a club gig that night, and for some reason the promoter in Denver, I'm sure it was AEG, shout out Adam Stroll. They've done all my Denver shows back to 2012, and they decided that like they didn't want any shows to compete with the Adventure Club show that night, which was in a basketball arena. So they paid me to cancel, to divert my show and put myself on that bill and make my Denver stop as support on the Adventure Club stop. So it was Adventure Club, and then I think there was another EDM group called Caked Up.
Yeah, I've actually know them.
You know what I remember from the Caked Up set? We talk about this sometimes. They came out and they had like these air cannons and stuff, and all they did was come out and scream over their beats and just shout, "Denver! Denver!" They didn't say one other word the whole night. It was Denver! Shout out Caked Up.
Yeah, dude.
But I think it was me, Caked Up, Adventure Club. It might have been Caked Up, me, and then Adventure Club. And I'm playing with a full band. We're doing like fusion, hip hop, jazz influenced. And you know who made that show work was Anderson Paak. Really? Because this was the 2014 tour. He produced my 2014 album, All You Can Do, and he came to perform on that tour his solo music, but also he sang in our band on that tour as a way to make the whole operation work, make the bus bunks work, which in retrospect is so crazy because, you know, he's gone on to be a superstar and play the Super Bowl and do all these amazing things. But for that moment in time, you know, he was on the tour with us, and he's just fearless on stage. And he really like in a situation like that where I'm playing to a crowd that's not my crowd, I can sometimes, you know, they can see the whites of my eyes, and I get afraid. Like, these people aren't going to want us to perform for them. But Anderson .Paak's not like that, and I think it's a big reason that he's succeeded to the level he has. You know, he's totally fearless, and he really took the mantle at that show of like, no, we're going to be ourselves. And look, it's like EDM crowds, I think fundamentally are not judgmental because they're about plural, like life, peace, love, unity, respect, like enjoying the moment and like being there and partying with people who are in mutual non-judgment. And so I think if you can take that mentality into an electronica show, you know, there's the crossover for jam band scene. They'll fuck with a lot of different types of diverse music if you're just having fun up there. And he really broke the ice and allowed us to have fun on stage for an audience that like we could have bombed so hard in front of them.
Yeah, it sounds like it would be like, you know, kind of a scary experience because it's just like a different fan base.
It is a different fan base, but I really think because he managed to break the ice, it allowed all of us to let our guard down and have fun. And people were jamming. They were enjoying the show. And then after our set was over, me and the band, like, we just went into the crowd and just like partied during the Adventure Club set, and we're, you know, raving it up. It was awesome.
No, amazing, dude. I want to talk to you too. Speaking of Anderson, I know he produced Woah, 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 or one of the producers on there. I want to just talk to you about the moment of Woah, Woah, Woah and that, because I know that was a big moment.
Yeah. So Woah, Woah, Woah was the last song added to All You Can Do. All You Can Do came out less than a year after Cardboard Castles, and he was really adamant that the album was missing something. And in retrospect, he was so right. And he was just like, dude, you need to just bring the same type of energy that you brought to the fast rap video to one of your songs. And there was a beat that we'd started working on, myself and Mikos de God, fellow Bay Area musician. And so Mikos had created this chord progression and had the seed of this beat. And a lot of people contributed to the production of Woah, Woah, Woah. It's one of those things where, like, instead of too many cooks in the kitchen, everybody's flavor just kept making it better. You know, there was drums that got added, and Julian Lay came in and added this incredible live keys stuff. And let's see, all these kids came in and sang the chorus. And I had these bars, these 16s that existed on other songs that I was like, well, these really could marry here. I had this chorus and this melody idea. And so just at the very end of the All You Can Do sessions, we put that song together, and last song on the record became the single and became, I think, you know, maybe my second most successful song and one of my favorites for sure. Yeah,
you know, from touring with you for years, that song always goes crazy. Like, it never misses for me, dude.
I love that song. I mean, it's been on every one of my tour set lists since then, and it's generally been our closer. So, yeah, it's a fun one to do.
Yeah, I'm kind of jumping all over the place, but I'd like to talk to you a little bit about the Epic Rap Battles of History, dude, if that's cool.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, what was that experience like?
So I think I did Shakespeare first, and it was cool, man. I'm a theater kid. Like, I like to dress up and be fun and theatrical. And my favorite thing about getting invited by Peter and Lloyd, thank you so much for having me, to the Epic Rap Battles was getting to try to write bars in the cadence of these famous poets. So I did do a Doctor Who one. No shade whatsoever to the Doctor Who fan base. To me, that's the one that I kind of forget about because I didn't grow up on Doctor Who and I don't know the franchise that well. But to do Shakespeare and Poe, who have these two really iconic poetic cadences, to nerd out a little bit on poetry cadences. I mean, everyone knows Shakespeare's Iambic Pentameter, which is an iamb is an unstressed syllable followed by a stressed syllable. Is it cool if I nerd out on some stress shit?
You can nerd out, dude, yeah.
Yeah, so Iambic Pentameter is da-da, 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 da-da. And so I had a lot of fun putting the rap bars into iambic pentameter. And then I had a lot of fun with Poe. I believe his cadence from The Raven, the famous poem, quote, "The Raven Nevermore," is trochaic octameter. And so I had fun writing the Poe one in that cadence too. I got to like get on my rap bar, stress syllable, nerd shit for it.
I'm gonna be honest with you, George. I followed like a little bit, but I'm like learning.
Let me break it down in simpler ways. There's different units of stressed and unstressed syllables that have names to them.
Okay.
Have you heard the term iambic pentameter before?
Yeah.
Well, an iamb, IAMB, is an actual like unit of meter.
Okay.
And an iamb is an ud stressed syllable followed by a stressed syllable. Da-da.
Okay.
Da-da, that's an iamb. A trochee is a stressed syllable followed by an unstressed syllable. So once upon a midnight dreary, da 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 da. The stress comes first.
I grew up in a very Italian family, so that like when you do the da da, I was like,
da da. Yeah, sure. But they're all over the place. Once you know what to look for, dactyls is another meter.
But let's talk Warped Tour a little bit because I know Warped Tour is not like your normal headlining tours. How do you think Warped Tour differs?
Well, RIP Warped Tour, I'm so glad to have played it. I really take pride, and I don't know if there's anyone else who has this distinction. It's not quite an EGOT, but this is the EWATs. To have been able to play Def Poetry and Warped Tour is a Venn diagram intersection that I feel like very few people have the honor of being in the middle of. And I played it in 2014, and I played it in 2017, and it's crazy. I mean, it was crazy. It no longer exists, but it's this wild logistical operation where I don't know how many semi-trucks there are, but it's this convoy that moves from city to city, and people call it punk rock summer camp. You're basically going from one city to the next, and you have to be in a bus. Well, some people, crazy people, do it in a van and never sleep, but it's routed so that you basically are traveling overnight. And then you wake up in the parking lot of some other arena, and then immediately the stage starts to unfold. You have stages that are actually built into semi-trucks and then just like butterfly out, and all your gear's in another truck, and you get up at the crack of dawn, get off your bus and help the stage crew build the stage, and then wake up and see where the raffle got you for time slots for that day, and then you go to your booth, and I would spend pretty much all day at my signing tent, meeting people and shaking hands, and it's an immersive, difficult, smelly, germy, awesome, friendly experience, and I had a blast. I'm kind of built for Warped Tour. I got that just grimy tour life in me. So
I'm kind of having, I don't know if epiphany is the right word, but I just realized, when I met you in 2014.
In Connecticut at Warped Tour.
At Warped Tour, because I was doing interviews with College of Music. And, since then we've become good friends. But I'm like, this is kind of full circle because now here we are back in Connecticut doing an interview.
No, I remember. That was Hartford, right?
It was Hartford, dude.
How far are we from Hartford right now?
Probably like an hour and some change.
Can I interview you right now?
Real quick.
So, Mike Squires, we're in Connecticut right now, an hour and change from Hartford in we're in Danbury right now.
We're in Ridgefield, but on Danbury Road. So
I see. Confusing.
Yeah.
Mike Squires, can you tell me what the greatest state of the 50 states in America is?
I mean, without a doubt, it's Connecticut. There's just no debate.
Give me 3 bullet points why.
All right, we got the best pizza.
Oh.
What? What was that?
That was me on behalf of New York.
No, absolutely not, dude. I won't.
I'm not doing that. I'm just doing that on behalf of New York.
No.
I
don't
want the second bullet point.
Fall? Yeah, autumn.
Okay, Vermont would like to speak with you.
Damn, dude.
Number 3?
I need you to relax,
Number
dude.
3?
Number 3?
Yeah.
I think just the people, dude. We have some of the greatest people.
Greatest people in the world?
Yeah.
Strong bullet points, Mike Squires. Tell me, if Connecticut was a country, are there any countries in the world
You already know the answer. You're asking me a question you know the answer to.
A lawyer never asks questions they don't know the answers to. Michael B. Squires. If Connecticut were a country, would there be any countries in the world greater than Connecticut?
No.
So not only is Connecticut the greatest of the 50 states, how about territories?
Absolutely not.
Puerto Rico's got nothing on it.
Guam, this is as good as it gets,
As good as it gets. As a principality.
Yeah, there's nothing better. You are in the sliver of the best place on earth, dude.
You know, I had a conversation in the van yesterday about how I might talk to you about Connecticut. And I decided that there was nothing to be gained from me taking the counterpoint. I'm in Connecticut right now, and I love how much you love your state.
I'll die on that hill. Literally. I will die on a Connecticut hill, dude.
Are there any hills even in Connecticut?
We got little moguls. We don't have mountains, but we got hills.
You die on a small Connecticut hill. I'm gonna leave it at that. I love how much you love CT.
Dude, I mean, I'm just thankful to be here, and I love the community, and, you know, it's just like a community that's embraced me, too. So,
hell yeah.
You know, I love it here.
All right. I respect it. All right. I'm gonna give you the microphone back.
Thank you, dude. Let's talk about xInfinity a little bit. I know we touched on it earlier, but you did a video for every song on the project. What an undertaking.
Yep. I could have a house right now, but instead I made a video for every song on xInfinity.
Yeah. I mean, what was one of the challenges with that process?
I mean, the challenge of the process of making all the videos was that it just took fucking forever and it was expensive and there's a lot of songs on that record.
Yeah.
And I wanted the videos to all have their own unique concept and I wanted them to bleed into each other. There's a lot of videos that have transitional moments that I had to think about in advance. For instance, something like I did motion control camera, which is a camera that's programmed to move on a robotic, grid system, basically. And so at the end of Tiny Glowing Screens Part 3, which is the first song in this record, there's a camera move that wraps around my back. And then at the beginning of Talking to Myself, which is the next song, we did the continuation of that camera move wrapping around the character's back, who's the dancer in that video. And so there were these transitional moments like that I built into it, that I had to really think about how it was going to all flow together. And, it was just a big undertaking. It was something that I had to commit months, if not years to, and it was hard. And I'm not saying never do that again. I'll never do that again with my own money, but I would be happy for someone to give me $1 million to do it again.
That's very fair, dude. I want to shift a little bit because I remember that you had a studio session. I think it was you, Chester, Cootie, and Mike. Mm-hmm. How was that studio session, dude?
Wow. So I had this session with Chester Bennington and Mike Shinoda really, really quickly before Chester passed away. And it's hard to talk about and it's hard to think about. I think Chester found my music during xInfinity, and I don't know how he found it, but he resonated with it, and he invited me to do this session, and we talked about touring with Linkin Park together. And because I didn't know him that well and that long, I hesitate to talk a lot about it because I don't want to be vulturing off people who knew him better and had that longer experience. But he was a really good dude. I mean, crazy that this group that I'd grown up listening to, whose music I knew so well and loved, was inviting me to collaborate. So it was a real honor, and it's also really painful to talk about because it never materialized in anything, and it was this tragedy of his life and for his close friends and family and fans. So yeah, it was really awesome to meet him and collaborate with this awesome dude who, even at the end of his life, apparently really liked my shit and it resonated with. So crazy brief moment. Insane circumstance and sequence of events and, what might have been. I really wish that it hadn't unfolded that way.
Yeah, no, dude. I remember seeing it happen, because obviously we're homies, so I remember seeing everything happen.
Yeah.
And it was just, I remember texting you and just like heartbreak.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I'm not like a closed book about it, but the reason that I don't talk about it that much is because I feel like it's not my story to tell.
That's fair.
And I don't want to feel like I'm trying to ride the bandwagon off of it. And it's, it's this horrible thing that happened.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'd like to talk to you, too, a little bit about the Hamilton mixtape, dude.
Yeah.
I saw you on there. And, how did that unfold and come to be, dude?
Yeah. So I think Lin-Manuel Miranda, I believe, found my stuff because at the very beginning of the genesis of Hamilton as a project, Barack Obama had an event in the White House. And I remember this so vividly. Some of my friends performed poetry. I don't know where it was in the White House specifically, but he invited poets to perform at the White House. And Jon Stewart made so much fun of the slam poetry that was there. And I was really upset that The Daily Show was making fun of spoken word at that point. But Lin-Manuel Miranda performed this very early version of Hamilton there, and he met some of the people that I knew from the youth poetry scene. And I think somehow through that, he found my work, and we started following each other on Twitter many years before Hamilton happened. And, I learned about In the Heights and became a fan of his work. And so then when I was living in New York, working on Times Infinity in the winter between 2015 and 16, I was writing this essay collection, and I asked Lin if he would read it and blurb it. And I met him, and I walked my manila folder of my essay collection up to the stage door and got to hang backstage. And this was as Hamilton was becoming this massive phenomenon. And he invited me to perform one of these things called Ham for Ham, where like they do a performance at the stage door for people that are waiting in line for lottery tickets. And that was, we sort of just established a friendship relationship through that. I performed a guest slot in his show Freestyle Love Supreme a little bit ago, and he invited me to do that thing on the Hamilton mixtape, and he's been somebody who has really had my back and really made a tangible impact on my career. So Lin, if there's any chance you happen to hear this, thank you. Like seriously, he's somebody who I feel like has taken this huge influence he's had and really made an effort to lift up people around him and smaller artists, and he has seriously made a tangible impact on my career. So really have so much love for his career and, the way that he's turned the influence that he has to good.
Yeah, no, that's amazing to hear too. It's always good to hear stories like that too, because I knew that you had positive interactions, but I didn't know how big of an impact it made.
Yeah, I mean, that blurb that he did for my essay collection alone, I think had a big impact on it being successful. And, he just, I think there is some crossover between people who fuck with theater and fuck with rap and spoken word and who truly love those two things. As a fellow theater kid, but hip hop lover myself, I think people who genuinely have love for both those things, there is an intersection in people who are willing to give my music a chance and people who love Hamilton. So he's been huge, and it's just awesome to know sometimes that someone who has got that much influence and is that big, wants to wield it for smaller artists and, not just myself, but he's had a big impact on a lot of people.
Yeah, let's talk about your essay collection too. I know it was a New York Times bestseller, How to Ruin Everything. What inspired you to do that, dude?
Well, I love writing. And I love all sorts of writing. Poetry was the start of what I do. And it was an opportunity that presented itself. I did not go out seeking to write an essay collection, but someone came to me with the opportunity. And I think when they brought it to me, the idea was for it to be a little bit more of like a tour memoir. But I really didn't want it to be that. I wanted to write a prose collection that was not about being the memoir of a musician, but was about the little things that happen in my life, just sort of observational humor and minutia, and to show that I could be a writer in a way that exists outside my music. So while I was working on Times Infinity in New York, I was also writing this essay collection, and it was a great experience. I worked with a woman named Kate Napolitano at Plume/Penguin. She was my editor. Fantastic editor, and she was kind of, in a way, my the grad school writing professor I never had. So thank you, Kate, for being an awesome editor, and hope I get to write some more prose in the future.
I want to talk to you quickly about Cardboard Castles too. Do you have a moment from that era that stands out to you?
I mean, there's a lot of crazy stuff that happened during Cardboard Castles because that was really early in my gaining momentum phase. It feels like 5 years were packed into that 2-year period of 2013 because we had this studio session that I did with Koosh and Dylan Saunders and Nils Montan at this studio called The Spaceship in LA, and a lot of those songs on that record, I have these vivid memories of writing Tiny Glowing Screens Part 2 at that studio session and just having it written in my handwriting on a sheet of paper and then going into the studio room and performing it. The first time I ever read it aloud was the take that made the album. And that's really rare for me because I'm a perfectionist, and there's always this genuine emotion infused in that.
When I started touring with you, it was the Welcome to the Family tour. And what I realized immediately once I got on that tour is this is how tours are supposed to be run. This is like a good vibe. Like this is how things are. But I think the biggest thing that contributes to that, dude, is your leadership, dude. You're a very good leader, and I think you do a good job of treating your team well and things like that. Like, what do you think are some qualities of a good leader?
Thank you, man. Well, first of all, appreciate you saying that. That really means a lot to me. You know, my AKA, I don't get called this enough, but I'm trying to spread it around. Most organized rapper of all time. I don't know about greatest, but I'm fucking for sure the most organized rapper of all time.
I just, you know, George, you organized?
I mean, look, there's method to the madness, man.
You do have method to your madness, dude.
Like, I remember the checklist. Like, I make the shit happen.
That's true. It doesn't matter how it happens, but it does happen.
It's chaos, but like I'm gonna pull this shit off because I know where the hotel reservation's supposed to be. I know when we absolutely need to pull up. I know how much gas we need. Like, you know, I will flex on that. And I think that for me, like knowing the ingredients that needs to go into making something happen that you've never done before is the recipe for being able to pull it off. Like, you need to be able to break something down to its component parts to see how to make it happen, because something daunting like a tour might feel insurmountable. But then if you say, well, all I need to do is book these venues, and can I find a room in Atlanta, and can I find a room in Charlotte, and can I find a room in Dallas? If you start looking at each of those things, it's like, yeah, I could probably get a room in Dallas that could have me, and like, well, yeah, I could probably get a vehicle that can bring me around, and yeah, I could probably put this budget together. Like, that's how I look at all these endeavors. There are things leadership-wise that I feel like I'm not particularly good at. Like, I am not good at giving the big inspirational speech backstage. Like, Cootie is the one who can do that. And I think learning for me that like, that's not the kind of leader that I should be, because I hang back a little bit more, and I like to, you know, the way that I like to lead is by being the one who's willing to lift the boxes with everybody else. I think that, you know, if you're the kind of person who says, well, I made it to a leadership position, so now I can sit back and let everybody else do the work and I get to call the shots. Like, that's not how I operate. I would rather be like, no, I'm going to volunteer for the worst hotel room assignment and for the box lifting and all that other stuff because I'm part of the team. And that's a huge part of it for me, you know, to never lose sight of the fact that I spent many years not having an audience who fucked with my shit. And now I have that luxury. I have the sustainability that every artist dreams of. So I'm trying to never lose my career because I didn't do the little things.
Now, if there are artists out there that are looking to get into becoming an artist or like really trying to level up their game, you know, what's some advice that you could give them that you think would have helped you early on?
Well, I don't really have like a George's chicken soup for the aspiring artist soul, but I do have like, I guess some bullet point like kind of things that I think about for myself, and that I would have told my younger self. And the biggest one I think is that you don't have to white knuckle your grind. You know, like grind set is such a thing that I think a lot of us are reevaluating now in terms of how that's going to lead to a happy life. For me personally, the problem is never going to be not working hard enough, because that's baked into who I am. But I really need to remind myself to enjoy the process, to take a deep breath, to not be so hard on myself. I think really good work happens when you're relaxed. So if you can try to take that white knuckle work and turn it into hard but relaxed work where, you know, you're saying, well, all I can control is what I learned today, then you're going to be ahead of the game. But by that same token, one thing that I haven't always been good at that I think is so important is fucking reading the manual. And I'm not just saying like literally reading the manual, but I'm also saying like literally reading the manual. Like if you're learning a hardware or a software, before you dive in, and like please learn a whole bunch of hardware and software. Like these are the tools that we make our music with these days and do all sorts of art. If you have a tool that you're using to facilitate your artwork, don't start using it before you've read the manual. Like learn all the things. And that's not to say you can learn all the power keys and all the things before you learn it, but like read the manual, read it twice, read it closely, like figure out how to really use your tools in a really in-depth way, if you're not just scratching the surface of your software and your camera and you can really learn the functions of it, you're going to be much better at it. You're going to use it faster, and you're going to, all that learning is going to, you know, affect your ability to learn other things. So those are two big things. And I think that if you can do that, you know, work hard, figure out what makes you happy and what's fulfilling to yourself, and like really try to learn your craft, you're going to be ahead of the game.
Yeah, because one thing I've known about you, dude, since the beginning, you're very DIY, do it yourself, like make it happen one way or another. My last question to you is, what's next for Watsky?
Well, what's next for Watsky might not be Watsky. Watsky's been my stage persona for, 13 years now. My last name's been my persona, and it's like Watsky is sort of this elevated, confident version of myself. It's like for Bayhive people out there, it's my Sasha Fierce. It's like I get to step on stage and be the most confident, badass version of myself. And that's really served me. But just like back in 2012, how I felt like I needed to make this transition into being a music performer, I'm starting to really feel in my core that I need to make another kind of creative transition. And, you know, I've had this wonderful era of touring, doing these 35 show tours all over the country. And I don't think that's going to be in my future, at the very least, not in any immediate future. So I'm going to try to be creative in another way. I'm really hoping that filmmaking is involved in that. I'm hoping that I go back to prose writing. So music, I think in one way or another, I'll always be a hobbyist making music, and who knows? I'm not going to close any doors for myself or rule anything out. But after these years of the pandemic and canceled tours and successful tour finally, it's time for a huge breather for myself. And I think the Watsky era, you know, it's about time for it to turn the page into a new chapter.
No, I think that's a beautiful thing, George.
Hell yeah.
Well, I want to thank you for coming on the Mike Squires and Friends podcast, dude. Let's go.
Let's go. I love you, bro.
Love you too, dude. I'm going to let you get back to, because you're in the middle of a tour right now.
Big Mikey Squires, CT, stand up.
Let's go, dude.
Yeah. I'm just, I want to say for you, I love you, bro. You're the man. For those of y'all who think you know, but don't really know, Mike Squires is just a genuinely awesome dude. I'm grateful for you. Like, we met way back, but didn't really meet until like 16, 17.
Yeah.
And I'm just grateful to have crossed your path, man. You know, the grind set can be something toxic for a lot of people, but your grind is like so genuine. You just do things with a smile on your face. Like, you don't let the world beat you down, and like, you're just a resilient, like, good fucking dude. And I fucking ride. I'm Squire Squad. Wait.
Oh, snap.
I didn't bring my other one.
Oh, let's go, dude.
But like, Squire Squad till I die, baby.
Let's go, dude.
Hell yeah, you're the fucking man. I love you. I speak on behalf of the whole Squire Squad family.
I appreciate you,
CT
dude.
Massive. You're the fucking man.
George,
I love you, bro.
I love you too, dude. I appreciate you, man. Now, I want to share with you guys my thought of the day. And my thought of the day is this. Regardless of what your career is, you want to try to go into things with a plan. You don't want to go in just freestyling everything. Now, what do I mean by that? Well, if we take George, for example, you know, he dropped this 9-track album, but it was part of a bigger picture. It's obviously important to focus on the now, but try to make those plays that really will help you out in the long run. And a little progress every day actually goes a long way. Try to make the plays that are going to put you in the best position to win. And most importantly, everybody, y'all know the drill. You just got to believe before the world does.